My wife cheated with her boss, then manipulated me into buying her a $200, $0 beachfront house while secretly planning her escape. Now she's suing me for half the property, claiming I forced her into it, and I never even knew about her affair with the CEO, James. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. One day, everything was fine, normal, even. My wife, Jessica, and I had been married for about 8 years. We had a comfortable life, a nice house, good jobs, and a routine that seemed unbreakable. But then, out of nowhere, everything started unraveling and I found out she was cheating on me with her boss, James. The worst part, I had no idea until I accidentally stumbled onto it all. It started about 2 months ago. Jessica had been acting strange, more distant, distracted even when we were together. She'd cancel plans last minute, say she was busy at work or had to stay late. She was always tired, and her phone was glued to her hand more than usual. I noticed she had been deleting messages, hiding her phone when I came into the room, and suddenly she was more interested in her career than ever before. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was just stressed, or maybe she was working hard for that promotion she wanted. Then one night I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I decided to surprise her with dinner. When I got to the house, I saw her car was gone. Strange, because she always told me when she'd be home. I looked around, and that's when I noticed her phone lying on the coffee table. It was unlocked. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I just wanted to see if she needed anything, but what I saw made my stomach drop. There were messages between her and James, her boss. Not just work stuff, but explicit, intimate messages. Flirty texts, plans to meet up, and even talk about their sex life. I couldn't believe it. Jessica was telling him how much she loved the way he touched her, how she couldn't wait to see him again. My heart started pounding. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't even know she was having an affair. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? I spent the next couple of days trying to process what I'd found. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I looked at her, I saw her differently. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, was lying to me right in front of my face. I wanted to confront her immediately, but a part of me hesitated. I needed proof, real proof, not just some text messages. So I started digging, checking her emails, her social media accounts, anything I could find. What I uncovered was worse. There were secret meetings, hotel stays, even plans to run away together. Jessica was planning her escape, and I was just a cuckolded fool, completely blind to it. The thing that set me off the most was her attitude. She always acted like I was overreacting, like I was the crazy one for suspecting anything. She called me paranoid, accused me of being controlling, and told me I was making things up in my head. That was her usual tactic: lie, deny, manipulate. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not after I saw the truth with my own eyes. I decided I needed to confront her face to face. That's when everything changed forever. The day I confronted Jessica was a disaster from the start. I remember it clearly. She was in the kitchen humming some tune, pretending everything was normal. I've been holding it all in for days, but I couldn't anymore. I told her I knew about James, about the messages, the meetings, everything. Her face froze for a second, then she gave me this icy smile, like she was already prepared for this moment. "Oh, really?" she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've been spying on me, typical. You're so paranoid. Maybe you're the one cheating, huh? Or are you just jealous because I'm more successful than you?" She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, like she was trying to turn everything around, make me doubt myself. But I wasn't falling for it. I was furious, hurt, humiliated. She started spinning her lies, saying I was crazy, that I'd misunderstood, that she was just working late, that James was just a friend. She shrugged her shoulders and accused me of being possessive and insecure. That's when I lost it. I told her I'd seen the messages, that I knew about her affair, and that I wasn't going to be played like a fool anymore. That's when she finally broke down, but not in remorse. No, she started yelling at me, calling me a controlling loser, saying I was too jealous and that I was ruining her life. I couldn't believe how she was acting. She was so cold, so manipulative. It was like she didn't even care that she was cheating on me or that I'd caught her. Instead, she was trying to turn the tables, making me look like the bad guy. She kept saying I was forcing her into the house, that I was an asshole for controlling her, and that she only stayed because I forced her to buy that beachfront house. She even claimed I made her do it because I was insecure and wanted to keep her trapped. That was the moment I realized how deep her lies went. I felt a mixture of rage and despair. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. For years, I thought we had a good life, and now I saw everything for what it really was: her manipulation, her lies, her affair. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was bleeding inside. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I just stood there numb. She kept twisting everything, trying to make me look like the villain. It was all about her, her career, her escape, her game. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, trying to understand how I'd been so stupid. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the way she lied, the way she played with my mind. I felt humiliated, betrayed, but also angry. Angry that she'd used me, that she'd manipulated me into buying her this lavish house while she was secretly planning her escape with James. She told me she loved me, that she wanted us to be happy. All lies. I realized I'd been a fool for so long, but I also knew one thing: I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. After that confrontation, everything changed. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, trying to piece together what had just happened. The worst part wasn't just the affair itself. It was the way she had lied, manipulated, and turned everything around on me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I started obsessively going over every moment, every sign I missed, every time I dismissed her strange behavior. But I knew I had to act. The first step was gathering all the evidence I could find. I dug through her emails, her bank statements, even the texts she'd hidden on her phone. I wanted to be sure I had everything before I made any final moves. It was during this process I learned some shocking things, things that made my blood boil. Jessica had been secretly talking to James about the house. Not just casually, but in ways that showed they'd planned this escape for months. She'd been convincing him to help her sell the house, to make it look like I was forcing her into it. That's when I discovered she'd been manipulating the entire situation with the house from the very beginning. She'd never cared about our life together. Her goal was to get her hands on the money, on the property, and run away with James once she had enough. The house, this beautiful beachfront mansion I'd been led to believe was our shared dream, was never really ours. Jessica had convinced me to buy into her fantasy, but behind the scenes, she was planning her exit. She played me like a fool, convincing me to put down over $200, $0 on a property that she was only going to leave behind. She kept insisting I was doing this for us, that I was investing in our future. But the truth was, she was planning her escape all along. I also found out she'd been lying about her relationship with James. She claimed they were just friends, but the messages told a different story. They'd been having sex, talking about meeting up outside of work, and even discussing how she'd leave me once she had enough. I was stunned. The woman I'd trusted for so many years was just a con artist, using my love and my money to set herself up for a new life. At this point, I was angry, so angry I could barely think straight. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, financially, even legally. I realized that she'd manipulated me into believing she was the victim, that I was the controlling husband trying to keep her from her happiness. But in reality, she was the one controlling everything, including me. She lied about everything: her feelings, her plans, her entire life. She'd even convinced me to buy a house I could afford, thinking it was for our future, but it was just a pawn in her game. As I sat there, going through all this evidence, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I was going to fight back. Not just for the house, but for my dignity, for the years I wasted believing in her. I knew I had to protect myself legally, get a lawyer, figure out what rights I had, and prepare for the fight ahead. I wasn't just going to accept her lies and walk away. She pushed me to the edge, and now I was ready to push back. That's when I started planning my next move: how to expose her, how to get her out of my life for good, and how to make sure she didn't walk away with everything I'd worked for. I knew her game, but I also knew I had some tricks of my own. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was determined to come out on top. The more I dug into her plans, the clearer it became that Jessica's entire strategy was to manipulate the system and walk away with as much as she could get. She'd spun her web so well, making me believe I was the one controlling everything, when in reality she was pulling all the strings. The house, the money, her career ambitions, all part of her master plan to escape and start fresh with James. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I needed help, professional help, legal help. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in divorce and property disputes. I laid everything out, the affair, her lies, the way she'd manipulated me into buying the house. The lawyer was cold and professional, but I could tell she was surprised at how deep Jessica's deception went. Jessica had been very careful, covering her tracks, but I had enough evidence now to make a solid case. While waiting for legal advice, I also started gathering witnesses. I knew some friends of ours had seen Jessica acting differently, more secretive, more distant. I wanted to get statements from them, just in case she tried to spin her story. I also hired a private investigator to look into her financials, just to see if there was anything else she was hiding. Turns out, she'd been setting up bank accounts under James' name, transferring money and even planning to sell the house without telling me. All of it was part of her plan to disappear. The turning point came when my lawyer told me I had a strong case to challenge the house purchase. Jessica had lied about her income, about her intentions, and had used my name and credit without my full understanding. I also found out she'd been pushing me to buy the house under false pretenses, claiming it was for us, but secretly planning to leave me with the debt and the mortgage. It was infuriating to realize I'd been played so badly. I decided to confront her again, but this time not in anger, more strategically. I arranged a meeting, pretending I wanted to talk about the house, about our future. She played her usual victim act, crying, saying I was trying to control her, that I was paranoid and jealous. But I kept my cool. I told her I knew everything, the affair, the plans, the lies. I told her I had proof, and I was prepared to fight for my rights. Her face lost some of its bravado. I saw the flicker of panic. That's when she dropped the bomb. She claimed she was the victim, that I'd forced her into the house and that she'd only stayed because she felt trapped. She said I was abusive, controlling, and that I had no right to take her to court. She even started crying fake tears, trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw through her act. I told her I would fight her in court, that I was done being played, and that she'd have to face the consequences of her lies. In the days that followed, the legal process kicked into high gear. I filed for full custody of the house, and I also started the divorce proceedings. I wanted her out of my life, out of my house, and to make sure she couldn't run away with the money she'd been scheming for months. I also made it clear that I was willing to fight for everything: my name, my reputation, my money. I'd been naive before, but now I was ready to stand my ground. Throughout it all, I felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that I finally knew the truth, and anger at how she'd manipulated me for so long. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, how I'd let her lie so easily. But I also knew I had to move forward, no matter how hard it was. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, not after everything I'd been through. The fight was just beginning, but I was determined to win. The court battles dragged on for what felt like forever. Jessica, of course, played the victim at every turn, crying, accusing me of abuse, claiming I forced her into the house and that I was trying to ruin her life. She hired her own lawyer, of course, and tried every trick in the book to spin her story. But I had all the evidence: texts, emails, bank statements, witness statements, and I made sure the court saw everything. One of the most shocking moments was when her lawyer tried to claim I coerced her into buying the house. They argued I used my influence and control to push her into the deal, trying to paint me as some kind of villain. But I had months of proof showing she manipulated me into it. She pushed hard for the house, convinced me it was for our family, and then secretly planned her escape. I also brought in witnesses who saw her acting suspiciously, making secret phone calls, and planning her getaway with James. The judge wasn't convinced by her manipulative tactics. After hearing both sides, he ruled that I had been deceived and that Jessica had committed fraud by transferring money and planning her exit without my knowledge. The court awarded me full ownership of the house, and Jessica was ordered to pay back the money she'd transferred illegally. The judge also acknowledged the affair and her attempts to manipulate the situation, which made me feel a tiny bit vindicated. But the real shocker was when Jessica's true colors showed again. She refused to accept the court's decision, and instead, she filed a lawsuit claiming I forced her into the house, that I had been abusive, and that I was trying to keep her from her freedom. Her lawyer argued that I had manipulated her emotionally and financially, and that I should be ordered to give her half the property. I couldn't believe her audacity. She was trying to turn the tables once more, claiming victimhood after all the lies she'd told. The courtroom was tense. I sat there, listening to her lawyer drone on about her supposed suffering, and I felt a mixture of anger and frustration. I knew I had done everything legally and ethically, but Jessica's mind was so twisted she believed her own lies. The judge, however, saw through her game. He dismissed her claims, reaffirmed the ownership rights, and told her to stop wasting everyone's time with her manipulative tactics. After everything, I finally felt some relief. The house was legally mine, Jessica's attempts at manipulation had failed, and I could start picking up the pieces. But I also knew the emotional scars would linger. I was angry at myself for trusting her for so long, angry at how she'd used me, and angry that she tried to ruin me even after losing in court. But I also realized this experience had taught me a lot about trust, deception, and the importance of standing up for myself. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Jessica moved out, but she continued to harass me with legal threats and false accusations. She even tried to sue me for half the property, claiming I forced her into the house and that she had no choice but to stay. I had to hire more lawyers, go through more hearings, and prove once again that I was the victim of her manipulation. It was exhausting, but I refused to let her win. I'd come too far to give up now. Looking back, I see how naive I was to think I knew everything about her. I realize now that betrayal isn't always obvious, and sometimes the person you trust the most turns out to be your biggest enemy. I've learned to be more cautious, more skeptical, even with people I love. And I've learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, is the only way to truly reclaim your life after betrayal. Now that everything is settled, well, almost everything, I look back and wonder how I ever let it get this far. Jessica's manipulations, the lies, the fake tears, all of it was in betrayal. She thought she could walk away with my house, my money, and my life, but I fought her every step of the way. The court proved she was the one who lied, cheated, and schemed behind my back. I won the legal battle, but the emotional scars still linger. Honestly, I feel a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Relief because I finally see the truth, that I was blinded by love, by trust, and by her lies. I was naive enough to believe her when she said she loved me, when she begged for forgiveness, when she promised she'd change. But underneath it all, she was just planning her escape. That realization is a bitter pill to swallow. I've learned a lot from this nightmare. First, never assume someone has your best interests at heart just because they say they do. Second, always be cautious with money. Never let anyone manipulate you into making big financial decisions without full transparency. And third, trust is fragile. Once broken, it's nearly impossible to repair, especially when it's been used as a weapon for manipulation. Today, I'm focusing on rebuilding myself. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional trauma. I've also taken steps to secure my financial future, making sure I won't be vulnerable again. The house is mine now, paid off, solid, and a symbol of everything I lost and everything I fought for. It's a fresh start, even if it's a painful one. Looking back, I realize I should have seen the signs sooner. The distant attitude, the secretive behavior, the constant lying. But I was blinded by love, and I guess that's what makes betrayal so devastating. You never see it coming until it's too late. Now I know better. I know to trust my instincts, to listen to that little voice that warns me when something's off. To anyone going through something similar, don't ignore the red flags. Don't let yourself be manipulated or controlled. Protect yourself, financially, emotionally, legally. Because once trust is broken, it's a long road to healing. And sometimes, the only way forward is to accept that the person you loved was never really yours to begin with. I can finally breathe again. I've learned a hard lesson about love, betrayal, and resilience. And I hope my story serves as a warning for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation. Be vigilant, stand your ground, and never let anyone take more from you than you're willing to give.